Good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with our session here this morning. Before I do, I just want to point out here on our housekeeping slide, you have all entered the session in auto mute mode. You are not able to communicate with me directly. However, at the end of the session, there is time for questions and answers if you would like. And if you notice here in the diagram on your GoToMeeting control panel, there is an icon to raise your hand. So if you can just save your questions to the end, if there are any, we will have time for that at the end of the session. Just for repetition's sake, to make sure that you are joined the correct session this morning, this is the Prognosis Denali upgrade for the electronic medical record, part 1. Our upgrade actually is being presented in 5 sessions as far as our webinar. There are 2 of them devoted to the EMR side, and this is the first part. What we're going to look at today is the general feature upgrades as far as the user interface, different label changes, as well as some functional changes with regards to the new feature of assessment scrubs, some modifications to your encounter level table of content menu, our new user interface for reports and graphs. But the second part of our webinar, if you are a clinician, please make sure that you attend the Part 2 EMR. We have a new feature called Orders Management that the entire session is devoted to. So even though we kind of touch on some of the changes due to that upgrade, this session does not get into the Orders Management itself. But what we're going to look at first here is our general user interface changes. This would be system-wide for all users, and starting, of course, with your home page, which is the launching pad when you initially log in. There has been some realignment here of the count of the fields, the columns. You see a comparison here, the existing home page down here at the bottom, outlined in pink, and we have put pink brackets around the fields that have been relocated. Also in the current or the new Denali homepage, if you notice there at the top, we have added a new column, which is the visit type or the encounter type. Currently, that is available only as a tooltip, which requires the user to hover his or her mouse over the patient name. So by adding it here to the home page and then resequencing these columns, it makes it a little more easy to discern the pieces of data. The left half, for instance, are your appointment level details, and then on the right half we have our patient routing, and that would be, of course, how the patient is moving through their visit. Now, by doing this realignment, we have brought the columns into consistency with your appointment tab, which is what we're looking at here. That is the default view when you log in, and then the open encounter tab, also on the home page. These fields, again, are resequenced to match so that when you toggle between the two, your hand-eye coordination does not need to modify, or your hand-eye, sorry. That way, as you're toggling back and forth, the name, the encounter type, the appointment details, and so on are in the same position. So those are just label changes and repositioning as far as the data is not new. Now, there is a label change to the status column. Many of our screens have a status indicator based on the data. Here on the home page, there are sometimes multiple statuses with regards to the patient routing. So that is why we have just updated the label to say visit status so that there is a clear indication of what that status represents. This, of course, is assigned automatically when a clinical person opens the chart from the home page, and that is when it inserts the prefix with. If you notice here at the bottom, the asterisk is informing you that that, of course, is coming from the user profile type. And we're pointing that out because the other label change here is with regards to clinical staff designation. When you are created as a user under clinical staff, until now, that would be hard-coded as a nurse. And many practices have multiple clinicians. They're not all nurses. Some, in fact, don't have nurses at all. So we have modified the content of that label as well to simply say clinical staff now instead of being hard-coded to nurse. So this is not a behavioral change. It is a label change only. And of course, when that status gets updated to ready for, that is when you are manually updating the status through the workflow icon. whether it's from the home page, the schedule page, or on the patient encounter itself. Now, if you use custom appointment statuses in your practice, there is no change to that. So you can still have an appointment status that says nurse if you would like that designation. But you would have to create that now as a custom appointment status because the default is no longer going to say nurse. It will say clinical staff. Now, moving off the home page, our patient register has a couple of changes as well, just to the user interface, not to the behavior. First of all, the label responsible person has been updated to guarantor. So under the patient tab, this of course is the person responsible for the bill. Ultimately, on the billing side, if you use both EMR and practice management, it already says guarantor over there, so we are just bringing it into consistency here. That is a label change only again. And then if you notice above the patient's photograph, the icon for patient notes will now refresh to a bright orange color when notes are present so that it catches your eye and you'll know to go in and review those notes. So when the icon is grayed out, that means there is no note present. When it has at least one or more note present, the icon will display in orange. Also under Patient Register, the Billing Info tab. Now this would only be applicable for those of you who do use practice management within Prognosis. The Billing Info tab is still present whether you have EMR, it just doesn't reflect any data. But for those of you who do have practice management enabled, when you come here to the Billing Info tab, you can see the patient level receivables. The label patient has now been turned into a hyperlink which will launch the patient's current statement. This does not require any additional special permissions, so anybody sitting at the front desk with your standard EMR front office permissions, in case now they get an inquiry from a patient during their time of visit, maybe they want to talk about their bill, you're able to do that without having to toggle into the practice management system. Simply click the word patient and it will open their statement. Now, when you are launching Patient Register through one of the pop-ups, as opposed to going under the Patient tab and selecting Register from the menu, there is the Patient Details icon on your home page, and then when you're on your schedule, you have the hyperlink to open the patient details. Both of these pop-ups now are brought into consistency as far as including the patient insurance. If you see the comparison here at the bottom, in your existing version, you do not have access to the insurance. With the Denali upgrade, the umbrella icon will now be present even when you open it through one of those pop-ups, so that if you are needing to view and or modify insurance at the same time as the demographics, it doesn't require you to back out and then click another icon and go back in. You'll be able to do it all in the same pop-up. The appointment schedule pop-up also has some aesthetic changes. One, if you notice at the bottom in your existing new appointment dialog, you have a history button. That has been relocated from the bottom up to the top, and it has been changed from a button with the word history on it to the actual appointment history icon that is used everywhere else in the system. So for consistency now, wherever you see that rewind arrow to the counterclockwise, that represents appointment history, even on the appointment schedule pop-up now. And then the label cancel has been updated to close. That again is a label change only. The functionality was always to close the window, not to cancel the appointment. That is done through the workflow process. So just to remove that ambiguity, we've updated the label to simply say close. Now we're going to look at some feature level upgrades on the encounter screen. First of all, again, with the label change only, on the Start New Encounter, the label referred by doctor has been changed to referred by provider for broader application because sometimes it is not a doctor referring the patient. Now, the Start New Encounter screen you may not be familiar with depending on your role in the practice. Typically, this is only accessed when you are not using the appointment module. Urgent care, for instance, walk-in clinics, those types of clients that do not use appointment scheduling, they start encounters without an appointment, and that is what this screen does. It's basically all of your same details as the appointment window. You're just doing it directly as an encounter. So function-wise, it's not changed. This is just a label change only. And similarly, on the Edit Existing Encounter, these screens are now in sync. So again, when you're doing a Start New or having to modify it, the fields are all now in the same alignment and with the same labels. And therefore, if you notice here on the Denali screen, we have added the reason field. The reason field, again, is on the Start New, because if you're not using the appointment module, but you're creating an encounter, again, such as our walk-in clinics and urgent care, they need to be able to specify the reason for that visit, the chief complaint. But previously, once that was saved, they were not able to modify it if needed. So now by adding that field onto the Edit Existing, you also are able to go in and modify it if necessary. That is also what reflects on your home page, incidentally, so that when the doctor and the nurses are looking through their home page at their day's patients, they know why they're coming or why they're going to be seen that day. So it's important to be able to have this data be accurate. Now moving to the table of content. The table of content menu, which is along the left-hand side of your encounter screen. There's a couple of changes here with regards to your menu choices. If you see the comparison here on the lower right, we currently have two options for lab and radiology. Lab order, and then the lab result, which has a submenu that enables you to view the results either through the structured data or the matrix format. Those have been consolidated, if you notice here on the left in the Denali encounter screen, to a single option only, simply called Lab and Radiology, and the submenu now includes 3 choices. So you still have the ability of going directly to the order, the structured data result, or the matrix view of the results. But it's through a single submenu from a single main menu choice. And then if you notice also here on the Denali version, we have a new menu option called Procedure Order. Now this is covered in a little more detail in our second session because this is directly tied to the new orders management feature that we cover there. This should not be confused with your standard specialty option that some of you may have renamed as Procedure based on local preference. And what this new procedure order option is a reflection of procedures that are ordered through the new orders management module or the order sheet. It gives you the ability of entering results there, creating new procedure orders and tracking them in conjunction with the orders management module. So again, this is not to replace your existing specialty item, which you may have relabeled procedure. So for more details, be sure you attend the part 2 of our session where we go into that orders management workflow. Now some other changes at the template level, and this would be with regards to all of your template levels, your vitals, HPI, review of systems, physical, and then specialty. First of all here with regards to vitals, ROS, and physical. And these are just, again, aesthetic changes to the user interface, not behavioral. The icon with the 2 sheets of paper like is being duplicated replaces the existing button copy. So it still allows you to copy forward a previous template. It's just been changed from a button into an icon. Also, the grid buttons, the big 1, 2, 3 buttons, are relocated over to the right marginalized now with all of the other icons, and again they've been shrunk down into little buttons as opposed to big buttons. So that's just kind of an aesthetic redesign to align all of the functional icons over along the right-hand margin. On the HPI level, those changes also apply to HPI, but there's one additional change under HPI, and that is the addition of the new H icon. So in addition to the relocated 1, 2, 3 and the copy button, you have this new H. That opens the patient's face sheet past medical history and a pop-up. So in conjunction with your history of present illness piece of the evaluation today, if you need to remember or recall the patient's current past diagnoses or ailments, You can do that through a pop-up without having to stop what you're doing and go back to the face sheet to look at them if you forgot. And then all of those choices are also under specialty. So we have the copy icon replacing the copy button, the 1, 2, 3 redesigned grid buttons, the new H icon to open patient's face sheet, past medical history, and a pop-up. But also now at specialty, we have 3 additional icons added. We have the face sheet for that encounter. Now, if you notice here under this bullet point, it says that custom face sheet configuration parameters apply. If no custom face sheet applies, then the system default face sheet, which is layout 0, will display. What this means is typically within prognosis, there is a possibility of 9 face sheets at an encounter level. Everybody by default has layout 0, which is your default face sheet. And that is the one where you're typically entering current meds, allergies, past medical history, family history, and so on, the 9 default squares. When this icon is called default face sheet, it means that, however, in situations where clients have created custom face sheets, that will supersede the rule. And therefore, based on the encounter type of your specific encounter, this icon may open a different face sheet from one visit to the other, because it's going to launch the default face sheet for that encounter type, not necessarily the system default. But in any event, it does open the face sheet in a separate pop-up. So while you are documenting your specialty template, you have the ability of being able to review whatever you have on that face sheet. There's also then a new icon to invoke a doctor form, also via a pop-up. All of these icons invoke a pop-up, which means you don't have to stop what you're doing on your specialty template level. This would allow you then, in conjunction with that specialty template, to populate a doctor form if needed. And then the last new icon is to open up the patient's document list. So if you need to review or access any of the patient's other documents on their document list, you can do that. Now you'll notice in the upper right, this was previously released, so you may be questioning, why is this included? I don't have the upgrade yet, but I've already got these changes. This actually came out in a patch in your existing version, but we were not teaching it through webinars, which is why we've gone ahead and included it. Another behavioral change is the Autosave behavior. Now, for those of you in a clinical scenario that use the workflow arrows, these green arrows on your templates, they already have Autosave behavior. What the upgrade is now doing is taking that Autosave functionality and taking it outside of the workflow arrows. So when you are now going through the table of content menus, and you're going back and forth maybe between vitals and specialty and review of systems and physical or face sheet or whatever, and you're not using the workflow arrows, then you either lose the data or you have a pop-up asking you, do you want to save? You've made changes that you haven't saved yet. Well, that behavior now has been changed from a yes-no only option to a new rule, which you can decide at a practice level whether or not you want the pop-up. So in other words, you can take this autosave functionality now and make it system-wide. So whether or not you're using workflow arrows, whenever you make a change, it will autosave without giving you a pop-up requiring you to say, yes, I want to save it. So the rule gives you 3 choices. One, which is the default value, is exactly what you already have, where you will get a pop-up warning you. You've made changes that you haven't saved. Do you want to save them? Or you can set the value to ignore, which means you will never get a pop-up, but you will also never be able to save the data unless you do it explicitly before you try to leave the screen. Or it can auto-save, which means you won't get a pop-up, but it will always save everything you've done. Now this is system level, so it would be for all users. Moving to the face sheet under health maintenance, notes has been added. All of your other face sheet squares, such as allergy, past medical history, and so on, includes notes, but health maintenance previously did not, so we have now added that along with a phrase master. So if you want to predefine health maintenance phrases, smart text or macros, whatever term you use. You now have that functionality. Now it's important to note that this is for a patient level health maintenance. It is not a note for each test. So it's one or more tests added to health maintenance for the patient. These notes would be applicable to all of the above. There's also a new tag so that you can have those notes on your progress note if you want. Vaccinations, there's some new output tags here to help define and distinguish recommended vaccines from required vaccines. So if you notice the second bullet point here under admin properties, we've always had the original property where you could define your required vaccines, but there's now a new property where you can also define recommended vaccines. And if you want to distinguish those then on your shot records or any output reports, you can do that through the new output tags. Document list submenu. There are some new document types added, and this again is to coordinate with the new orders management that we cover in our part 2 of the webinar. So when you go on document list at the encounter level and the submenu pops up, you will notice that there is now an option called consult and an option called procedure. And then based on the status of your consultation and or procedure, when you click that menu option, your document list is going to be filtered accordingly. So there's new document types that you will see on your document list if you're using that order sheet process. So sometimes you will see it as consult order, procedure order, as we see in our top screenshot. Or if a result has come in and you've attached it, then it will say consult response, procedure result. So those are all new document types at the document list level. If you don't use the new orders management workflow, you won't have to worry about these new procedure and consult types. Also on the document list, we have added pagination. That means that as you see here at the top of your documents, there's going to be hyperlinks now that represent page numbers. The scrolling area where you see your documents listed will now display up to 25 at a time, and then a new page will increment for the next 25. This gives you a greater efficiency with regards to screen load time and navigating across documents. So for those of you who have been long-term clients for multiple years, or you have multiple documents per patient, maybe you have frequent flyers that just have tons of documents. Every time you go in to load it and refresh it and view it or do anything with documents sometimes, it may be nanoseconds, but it may also seem like it's taking forever. So this will help index the documents in increments of 25 to make your screen load time easier and your navigation across them quicker. So you will still scroll in the middle, but your scrolling now will only be 25 at a time, and then you will need to go to the next page number. There's also a new icon displayed now on the document list. This is your Share On portal. Now, by default, it will be grayed out unless the user has the user role that you see indicated here at the bottom of our slide. There is a new user role that individuals can have given to them under user security called Share On Portals. In that case, then this icon will be available, and they will then be able to share documents by turning it on or off for the respective portals that are enabled at your clinic. So if the document is applicable for sharing and your clinic has the patient portal, the referring doctor portal, and or the employer portal, then users with that user role, when they choose the new icon, will get this pop-up, and then they can switch that document on or off, meaning it will be visible for users on the portal. Now, if the document is not yet available for sharing, you will get a pop-up that says not applicable for sharing. And that is based on the conditions for the document type, and we have an appendix included here that tells you what those conditions are. So for instance, results. If you let your patients view their results on the portal, well, there's properties that control when. So those conditions need to also be satisfied. So you may originally try to share a lab result and get the error that says not applicable, and you know in your mind, but I'm allowed to share results because we let our patients view them on the line all the time, it's probably because one of these conditions have not yet been met. So there are certain conditions like that attached that will give you the error versus the ability to share. Also, if you don't have the portal turned on for your clinic, meaning your contract does not include that portal, you won't have that option at all in this window. So even though in my screenshot here on the top I'm showing all three, you may only have patient, or you may only have employer, or a combination of the three. Because of this ability of sharing now, there's a new column on the document list called Portals that will have these little button icons. The gray icon with the white letter means it's not shared. The yellow letter and a blue circle means it is shared. And the letter represents which portal. P for patient, R for referring doctor, and E for employer. So you will very visually be able to determine if that document is already available for users on that individual portal or not. And as you see in the zoom here, you can have any combination of the portals. Not every document does not need to be shared at all, can be shared on all three, or can be shared on only one, only two, or all three. That is also part of the filters now. So if you want to filter your documents based on shared status, you also have that functionality on the filter screen. Now we're going to look at a new feature on our assessment screen. Well, there's a couple of new features here actually, and this would be regardless of if you're using our practice management or not. It's beneficial if you use practice management because it's going to make sure that the claim is auto-created correctly from up front. But even if you don't have practice management with prognosis, your assessment data is still what feeds the claim. So you're probably using some sort of an export report or interface file back to your mainframe to provide this data. So you can still use this feature even if you're EMR only. Now what the functionality is regarding the claim when a CPT or HCPC is different for a government payer versus a non-government payer. Sometimes the same procedure or service will have different code requirements based on the payer level. Well, our default logic has always been based on the encounter type. So if you notice our number 2 here in the upper right, in your encounter type master, there is a flag called Medicare, where if that is turned on, then on the assessment is going to show the government code for the service. Otherwise, it would show the regular standard code for that service. So the functionality remains. However, it's now going to be based on the insurance claim filing code instead of the encounter type flag. If the patient does not have insurance, then it's still going to look at the encounter type flag. But for those of you using practice management, if you have already got crossover code in place or scrubber checks, it's going to be totally up to you if you want to change your logic or not. You do not have to. This is all a new available enhancement. So by default, it's not going to be turned on. So if you already are using crossovers or scrubber checks for this feature, you can continue to function as is with no modifications to your workflow required. Or you can make the determination that you do want to start using this functionality so that it shows the same code on the assessment in EMR that it copies over to your bill. Because in the existing version, if you're using AR grouping for your crossover code or your scrubber check, then assessment shows the standard code even though you're changing it on the claim. So that is totally at your discretion within your workflow if you want to use this feature or not. But it gives you the ability so that based on the patient insurance, the correct code will be put on the assessment, and therefore when the encounter is closed and the claim gets created, it will reflect the correct code on the claim. Also at the assessment level, we have moved the AutoCopy Details from a system level property to a specialty level designation. So the property that you use now, which is system level for all users, is now obsolete. And each individual specialty can now have the AutoCopy designation, whether they want the diagnoses, CPT HCPC, goals, and or notes to AutoCopy or not. This is especially advantageous for multi-specialty practices. Now, In a single practice world where you've already got this property set, as you see in this picture, it will automatically copy to your single doctor's specialty, so there's not going to be any modification required by you during upgrade. But for doctors that currently have, or for clinics that currently have multi-specialty and therefore have probably not been able to use this feature yet, they will now be able to go into each individual doctor's specialty and determine what level of autocopy they want, at which level of the assessment they want it. Also, a new feature added here to the assessment level is scrubber checks. Now, this is in the EMR side. However, for those of you who also are familiar with our practice management, this is the same logic. We've got scrubber checks already on the billing side, but this is now allowing you to scrub assessment level data so that before the claim even gets created, it can be scrubbed for correctness on the clinical side of things. This again is strictly optional. If you notice at the bottom here in the blue box, there is a property that controls it. If that property is not set to yes, you will not have access to the master file to build the scrubbers. But if that property is set to yes, then you will have a new master file under configuration called scrubber checks, which allow you to define it. Now, what a scrubber is, if you're not familiar with the concept, is on the assessment screen, it will be a validation, and if there's something wrong based on how you've defined the scrubber, it's going to give you a pop-up. As we see in this example, we have put an E&M level for a new patient and established patient on the same assessment. Well, obviously, you cannot bill both as a new and established patient on the same data service for the same patient. So that would be wrong. So the scrubber check is telling you, you cannot save this assessment because one of the codes needs to come off. So if you're going to use it, then this is what the master file screen looks like. You'll go into the setup button at the top there where the number 1 is and define what your parameters are, the validation. That will then auto-copy here in the description field. The system actually displays it in that gray area based on what you choose through the setup button. And then number 2, you're going to indicate whether you want it to be a warning, meaning the user will read the pop-up, but then they have to decide if they want to overwrite it or fix it. Error means that they must fix it, or they will not be able to update the data. And the update option is reserved for our internal use. And then this is what the scrubber check setup looks like. It's basically building a mathematical expression. So you may have thought you were never going to use your middle school algebra, but now you have that opportunity because you're going to just build this little equation through 3 fields. Your operand is the data element that you want to start with your comparison, whether it's a CPT code, an ICD code, the doctor NPI, the insurance, whatever. So you choose the operand. Then the operator is the action, the mathematical activity, equal, compare to, greater than, less than. And then the value is the condition, the quantifying value that you want in this equation. Do you want the diagnosis to be greater than 250? Do you want your CPT code to be equal to 85000? Whatever. So you choose these expressions and you can build more than one per example. So this is what we just saw in our pop-up. This is the design of that pop-up message. We've said we want to look for an assessment CPT code equal to 99201 and then also a CPT code equal to 99211. And if both of those CPT codes exist, then I want this pop-up error to tell me both a new and established E&M code is present, remove one. And out here I identified it as an error, which means I must remove one or I cannot save my assessment data. And then of course that means that when the claim is created, it's created correctly and the biller doesn't have to spend her time fixing it. So that's the benefit of this. It's also available on doctor forms. So if you're using doctor forms in your office to incorporate assessment level data, then for that doctor form under design view, make sure that when you request the form to be designed, the engineer knows you want scrubber checks to be applicable. We've also got a new provision called AutoCopy Prescription. You see the property here at the bottom of the slide in the blue rectangle if you want to use it. Now this supersedes any of your current system default logic. So again, it's optional. You do not need to use it. All of your existing logic with regards to completing a prescription where it brings forward the patient's preferred pharmacy, the last time you wrote the drug, it brings forward that strength and dosage, dispense quantity, and so on. That still remains the default behavior. However, this new property will supersede that, and that it will auto-copy the entire prescription from top to bottom, including all special SIG, refill, any additional instructions to the pharmacy, and so on. Now, this is only going to auto-populate on a non-zero duration encounter that is not a system non-zero duration, meaning if you go under the encounter table of content and you choose prescription, if you go to doctor form and prescription and CPOE prescription, that is when this property will be invoked and populate the screen. Now, if the immediately previous encounter has no prescription, then it's going to look through encounter history in descending order until it finds the most recent last prescription and then bring that forward. It is not going to look at refill request encounters, which are zero duration system created. It will also not look at deleted or reopened encounters. Basically what this feature is for are clients that have medication management as a standard encounter. For instance, I'm aware of this one physician that he has hundreds and hundreds of patients he sees quarterly simply for medication management, and it's not just one or two refills, it's like 20 or 30 based on the illness that the patient has. So he wanted the ability of taking that exact prescription from 3 months ago and bringing it forward automatically. So that is what this property is for. Also at the prescription level, there is now a combination of errors in one window. So when you go in to complete an e-prescription to SureScript, if there are demographic level errors, right now they come up one at a time. So you may go fix the phone number, try to e-prescribe it again, get a different error that the zip code's wrong. Go fix the zip code, find out the name is misspelled or whatever. So now if there are multiple errors, they will all appear in a single pop-up. So when you go to fix demographics, you can fix all of those fields at one time. Moving to the encounter close screen. This again is tied into the new orders management that we discussed in part 2. There is new lines for consults and procedures added to your summary table. And if you choose to use the pending order sheet property in conjunction with orders management, then you also have the new line in red that includes procedures and consults in your error validation. All right, so that is all the system or patient register, patient encounter level feature changes. Now we're going to look at other upgrade features, not necessarily encounter specific, but still relevant. First of all, patient letters out. There's now a total of 47 recipients that can pre-populate based on the association under patient register. So this is dealing with that 2 drop down in the upper left of letters out. We've added now in this upgrade case management and employer level contacts. So if you are using attorneys and case managers and employers in your workflow and you want to correspond with them from letters out, you can now do that without having to manually address it. Now, of course, that means that the respective master file needs to have the fax number and email present. Otherwise, you're still going to manually type it in. Clinic forms, a user interface change as far as very similar to some of the aesthetic changes we talked above to bring it into consistency with other screens in the system. We have changed the word name from a hyperlink into the binocular master file search when you want to change patients. So you still have the ability of going from one patient to another. It's just that instead of clicking on the word name, name is no longer a hyperlink. Instead, it's the label patient and you have the binocular, which opens your patient search. And then similarly, we have done away with the hyperlink for insurance and added the umbrella, which is your patient insurance icon. So those are not functional changes, they're aesthetic changes on your clinic form. Now moving out to the system level, the next major upgrade here on EMR would be the user interface for reports. It is now a single screen user interface, which allows you to select your report, define your parameters, generate the output, and then refresh those parameters to generate new output, all within a single existing screen. In your existing world, you have 3 separate screens. So it's a lot of clicking and researching. You choose your query, in a separate pop-up, you define your parameters, and a third pop-up, you get your generated output. And then if you want to refresh it, change the parameters, you start all over. So we've simplified it now by taking those 3 separate windows and turning it into a single window. So there's now a splitter in the user interface that the header above where you define your parameters stays static, and then the output below can refresh based on the parameters you refresh up above. So that top line, 1, 2, and 3 is basically your report's catalog. Now, the logic here is not changed with this upgrade, but since some of you may or may not be aware of the feature, you do have the ability of creating a personal My Report catalog. You know, sometimes you go in there looking for a report and you're not really sure which one to run. There's hundreds, plus the way engineering has named it may not make sense to you or may not be exactly how you would call it. But once you identify the report and you know its value, you can save it as My Report. Then that becomes your default when you come in here. So if you've chosen My Reports or defined them, that will be your default. Otherwise, it does default to all. Classification, you may also modify. So again, by engineering, we may call it a system report or a collection report, appointment report, whatever. You may decide this is daily, this is monthly, this is productivity. Whatever makes sense in your world, you can change that if needed so that your reports are much easier to identify. And once you've defined them as custom, they're going to be your default value, which minimizes search clicks. Otherwise, it will be, as you see in this screenshot, all, and you have to scroll through and search. Now that 4th field up there in the upper right, now these filters that we're going to look at are features for you at runtime when you generate your report so that the data is tailored to what your need is. Freeze columns behaves as Microsoft Excel freeze pane, if you're familiar with that feature. This is so that maybe your report has 20 fields of data, and as you scroll through those columns, you need to keep the patient name in reference or the insurance company in reference. So you can now dictate up to 4 columns that you want to freeze, or 3 columns, sorry. And then as you are scrolling to the data, those 3 columns will stay static on the screen. Number 5 and number 8 gives you flexibility in determining the date parameters for your report. You can either specify a period, such as today, this week, this month, or a custom date range where you actually specify a from and through date. Or under number 8, if that field is enabled for you, then you can just specify a number of days. Instead of looking on your calendar and seeing, okay, it's November 14th, if I want 90 days, I need to go back to August 15th, or is it August 13th, or is it August 14th? And then you do the 30 days has September, April, June, and November, or you look on your calendar, you can eliminate all of that and just say 90, and then the system will do the calculation for you. Now that parameter has to be built into the query of the report. So if the field is grayed out, as you see in this example next to my number 8, that provision is not available. But if the provision is available, then that field will be enabled. 6 is a condition that, again, if it's defined, will be enabled. The label applicable title is going to be specific in that case. Maybe you've requested this report based on encounter type or based on physician UPenn or payer. Then this would say encounter type or payer. And the binocular under number 6 is going to open up that master search. so that you could choose a specific encounter type or insurance company. So these are all parameters that, again, you can run at runtime. And then it will refresh your data in real time right there on the same screen. And then these filters over here on the right are all optional, of course, if you are defining filters, if you want them sorted in a specific area. Number 9 is of note here, however, the hide identifier, which is applicable in cases of PHI. Maybe you're running the report in-house, and so you need the PHI, but now you've decided it is something that you need to share. So you can regenerate the report, but click this checkbox to hide the identifier, and then the PHI will come out masked as X's, so that when you produce it, whether it's emailing it or printing it hard copy, you're sharing it with protected PHI. So these are all, again, something that you can do at runtime and regenerate the data all in one screen. Now that same logic is also applied to your graphs. Graphs are not as frequently used in EMR as they are in practice management, but the functionality is here for those users. Some doctors or COOs or whatever do like graphs. So it's the same flexibility with regards to defining or being able to have everything in a single window as opposed to separate windows, which you now have. You can classify them. Now there is no personal graph library as there is under reports, but typically there aren't as many graphs as there are reports, so you can usually get by with that. But again, you do have the ability of personalizing your classification if you decide that you want end-of-month graphs, daily productivity graphs, or whatever. It's whatever works for you. This is your organization of your graph catalog. And then when you generate it, again, it's in one window, and you can refresh it. If you notice number 1, you can change it, maybe from a bar graph to a pie chart, to a histogram, to a line chart, whatever is relevant to you. As you see the number 2, you can hover in on the tooltip to get the data, and zoom in. You can print it. Of course, if you have a color printer, it'll come out in the colors you've predefined. So in the design view of your graphs, if you have administrator rights in your practice, then you can come in here and specify the type of chart, identify the colors, the labels you want printed on your XY axis, and so on. And these are the 5 types of charts. So you can define one as the default, but then up here at runtime, you can change it from one to the other if you want to see it depicted in different versions. And then whatever the one is you're looking at is the one you will print there when you click the printer under number 3. All right, now we're going to look at system level. So all of that was kind of user functionality. Now under system, meaning if you have administrator permissions and you go under the configuration menu, we have some nomenclature and label changes here. To minimize confusion, you'll notice here at the top on the right-hand side in your existing version, there's a column called medics that has been relabeled as users. Label change only to take away the ambiguity that these are all users, not necessarily doctors only. And because of this label change, down here at the bottom, you see 4 examples throughout the application where wherever your user list is accessible through a master file search, that also will now say users instead of medics, like in your message compose, in your attaching, and so on. It could be somewhat confusing when it said medics because you might have wanted to attach it to your front desk or to your medical assistants, and they're not a medic, they're not a doctor. So that is why this label change has been made. Also, under the user profile column, admin staff has been modified as office staff because some folks were thinking that this meant administrator level, like IT, and it does not. It means administrative, such as clerical or office. So this will now help you when you are defining users as to are they clerical staff or office staff. And then the menu choices for your messages, attach and scan, have been clarified as well. Instead of simply attach, it is attach center, and instead of scan, it is scan/local attach. Label change only. Logic is the same. The attach center, of course, includes incoming faxes as well as incoming scans. It also allows you to detach and move. So it's an entire functionality dealing with attaching or detaching. Scan/local attach allows you to scan directly as opposed to bulk scanning or locally attaching. So maybe it's not something you've scanned, but you've created a Word document on your computer and you now want to attach it in Prognosis. You can do that through the local attach. So that menu choice has just been modified as far as the label so that you understand the full functionality underneath it. There's two new two new master files, organization provider, referring organization. And these are tied into the new orders management that we discuss in part 2. Those are non-human places that you're referring patients to, such as institutions. Complaint master now can be sequenced. So for your medical assistant or whoever does intake, when they go under the Encounter HPI and they click the binocular to choose the complaint, you can now sequence the order they display. Specialty template nomenclature. This is when you're designing your specialty templates. The label face sheet now displays as carry forward to clearly define its behavior. It does not display on the face sheet as the current label implies. It just means that this data can carry forward historically, which is what face sheet level data does. And then for your CPT HCPC, the label mandatory now says default, because it's not that the CPT is mandatory, but rather if you define it under that button, it will default to the bill, as opposed to being optional where a human has to manually select it. So those again are just label changes when you're designing your specialty template. Also under templates, there is now a copy at the system level. Very useful provision when you do template building. Especially as you see in this example, when you need to duplicate 20 questions from the left extremity to the right extremity, from the lower to the upper, you now, instead of having to recreate each one individually, can simply copy them. So on the left-hand side, you would highlight the system you want, click the new copy icon. It asks you where you want to copy them to. You don't even have to have that new system created yet. You can name it at this level, and it will create a new system with a duplicate of all those questions. Clinic form configuration. In conjunction with our new orders management, there is an option of defining a clinic form to a procedure template as a checklist. So under clinic form design, we've added a new checkbox option called procedure checklist. And that will then make it available in the new procedure master to be associated to a procedure template. And we cover that in the second webinar. Import XLS provision allows anybody with system administrator rights to import new elements from an Excel document. That would be for the sake of creating new templates. There is a new save as under user role, so that if you need to create super roles, it's easier now because you can just do a save as and then modify the permissions as opposed to creating new from scratch. That saves a lot of time and key clicking and searching. For those who have internal administrator access to modify properties, there's a user interface modification here, which makes it a lot more user-friendly. In the existing version, which I don't have here for comparison's sake, it just kind of looks like a scary DOS programming screen. So now it's been turned into on-off switches, pick list, multi-choice, and so on to make it easier for you to define. Most importantly, along with that new change, is the supported event property is now available to users. Previously, this was reserved for administrators only, but now users such as nurses and doctors can modify this as needed, and that is because this property is what controls the system messages you get in your inbox. So some doctors and nurses may end up getting all of these FYI system alerts that they really don't care about, such as Dr. Doolittle has referred a new patient to you. Well, you know that when you meet the patient, you're going to know who referred him. So maybe you don't want this advanced notification because it's cluttering your inbox. This is just an example of how the supported event messages look in your mailbox. So if you want to control those or manage those, you now, through this admin property, since you have access, can choose supported events, go into the binocular, read the text of the alert, and then select only the ones you want to receive. And then just across the board, some system-level miscellaneous changes. There's some validation added that CPT HCPCS at a state level will no longer auto-populate the claim. Your drug info sheet is now available in PDF instead of HTML. If you do any kind of interface like lab results with decimals, the entire decimal range will now be displayed instead of truncating at 2. There's a new clinical ID output tag to include the clinic ID on any of your output templates. Validation has been applied to prevent a user from deleting a CPT or HCPCS code if it has been utilized before. And then on those screens where you have access to assign color, there's now a color selector tool to make that easier as well. And then one final reminder, if you do anything with orders, please make sure you attend the second session. Now what's next as far as the upgrade? When you are scheduled to be upgraded, you will know 7 days in advance. When you log into Prognosis using your user ID and password, as soon as you click login, this pop-up will occur 7 days out, telling you that you're scheduled to be upgraded. Now you can always contact technical support if you have any questions, either through the Resource Center chat or by calling them, but please note they do not have access to the schedule. That comes through our upgrade group. First time user experience bubbles. Once the upgrade is applied, you will know all of these new features that we've just highlighted in the PowerPoint because you will have these little yellow pop-up bubbles. You can hide it. If you hide it, that will be for that session only, meaning the next time you come into the screen, it's going to pop up again. If you say, don't show me again, you will quit seeing the pop-up. And then at some point, if we start embedding videos, there would be a third hyperlink that says click to play video on that feature. Currently, there are no built-in videos yet for the Denali upgrade. You always hit the new release shortcut button at the top. That displays for like 30 days. That opens your release notes. Now, even after that bubble goes away, release notes are part of your online help. We're dealing with EMR in this session. That's under the turquoise color column when you go under release notes. And then on our Resource Center, remember that we have the videos and the documentation. Under documentation, you can access a PDF version of this webinar that we just covered if you want to download it or print it or just look at it online. Under videos, there is a section called Webinar Videos. So there is a recorded version of this webinar out there as well if you need to replay it or have someone else in your office attend it. And then as always, feel free to contact us if you have any feedback or comments. So that is the conclusion of today's session. Of those of you present, does anybody have any questions that you would like me to go over in more detail? If so, if you click your little raise hand icon, I will be able to unmute you. All right, excellent. Well, I'm going to wish you all a good week, and hopefully we'll see you again in one of our other sessions. Y'all have a pleasant day. Thank you very much for attending.